Hello, my name's Andy Derrett from Race Technology, and in today's video I wanted to do a longer discussion about the use of the GoPro only software, and in particular I wanted to use some of the controls within Analysis and how you can use those to improve your lap times or race performance or driving in general. So we've been shipping the GoPro only software for a few months now. It was released earlier this year. And it's proving to be very popular, so that's great. But I think a lot of our customers still view it as just a way to do some graphics overlays and add some graphics onto an exported video. And certainly that's part of the function. But really there's a lot more to the analysis software. The analysis software is about improving driving, improving race performance, improving lap times and so on. It does also do the video export stuff, which is pretty cool. But that's not the main focus. So today I wanted to talk about the data analysis. So if you're not familiar with our software, as I say, it's something we introduced earlier this year. I think it's unique. We're not aware of any direct competitors, but basically you can import your GoPro file. Our software strips out all the data that's embedded in the video file, so that's GPS data, accelerometer data, gyro data, and it processes that to generate track maps, lap times, time slip, grip levels, cornering Gs and all the rest of it, and that's then available in our complete analysis package, so you've got the data alongside the video, and actually that makes for a pretty powerful race analysis tool, as I should demonstrate now. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the computer. I've already installed the software. It's completely standard installation straight off our website, nothing special about it at all, so I can start it from here. When you start our software launcher, there's actually 4 applications. So the main one I'm going to talk about is the analysis software. That's the data analysis software so you can look at your data alongside the video. There's also the layout designer. So that allows you to come up with your own custom layouts for doing the data overlays on video. To be honest, a lot of our customers never use that. They just use up the standard factory layouts that we supply. But if you do want to customize them or do your own, then that is certainly possible. We also have our video joining software. So that allows you to take multiple GoPro video chapters, as they call them, and then combine them into one single video. Actually, that's a really useful application. So in some of the GoPro recording modes, you only get maybe 5 minutes of video within a single GoPro chapter. So doing an analysis on just a few minutes of race data is not that useful. So if you do have lots of chapters, then you can use our application to join them together. The advantage of using our application to do that as opposed to any other is twofold. First of all, it's really fast, so it joins them incredibly quickly. It's just limited by hard drive speed, really. And also it keeps all the data, all the GPS and accelerometer data fully intact. So there's a separate video on that. I'm not going to go into it now, but that's really useful. And finally, there's a video playback application. So some of our users use it, some of us just use VLC. I have to say I use both myself as well. Actually, I use VLC and sometimes I use ours, but it's there anyway. It's a useful tool. Okay, so we'll crack on. Let's take a look at analysis. So I just click on the icon to start it up. Should say this is already registered, so if you haven't registered the software, before it starts up you'll just get a little nag screen. You've got 30 days to register, so within 30 days you can just click to ignore it. So in this case, because I'm going to demonstrate the different controls of the analysis, let's start with a blank session. Obvious things to do is first of all load in a video. So I can either go here or I can go file and load. So let's use the icon, so click here, load. So okay, I've got various videos on my desktop, so let's just select one of these. So I should say before going any further, so our software can handle MP4 files or the LRV files from the GoPro. So most recording modes on the GoPro you can actually get 2 video files. So the MP4 is the really big, very high resolution video capture, and the LRV is just it's widescreen VGA resolution normally. So it's still very high quality. I mean, it's DVD quality, which used to be the standard, and it includes all the GPS data, all the accelerometer data, but it is much lower resolution than the MP4 files, so they're much smaller. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, if you want the full top quality and you're doing some video exporting, then normally you'd want to use the MP4 file. But if you're doing data analysis and you just want to see what traffic was on the track and you're after speed and just want to get on with doing some analysis, actually the LRV is the one to use. It's much quicker to transfer. So okay, so let's pick the LRV in this case. So I'll say open, and actually our software has identified both as available, so it's saying do you want to use the MP4 or the LRV. Let's go for the LRV, just showing you a preview. Yeah, that's the one I want. Okay, so what the software has just done is extracted all the data from the GoPro file, it's converted it into our native race technology format and it's loaded that data in. So if I want to load two in at the same time, I'd load again and I can then load a second file in or a third file in. So but let's just stick with one for now. So okay, so we've loaded a video. There's nothing to see on the screen at the moment, still blank. So I'm going to, before I do any data analysis, I'm going to introduce some of the tools which are available. So most of the popular ones, they're shown as icons here, or we can go to results. So let's use the icons. So the first one normally people look at is the track map. So you can see it's plotted a track map, which is obviously generated from the GoPro's GPS. And I should say normally the GoPro GPS data is very good quality, considering it's an integrated antenna. We've seen a few problems when the camera's mounted upside down, but normally it looks pretty tidy. So that's a complete track map. There's a few options on here. We can move it around, we can recenter it, we can zoom in, zoom out. You can even rotate it a little bit if you want to. We can also load a Google Maps to the background. And again, with the background on, we could zoom in and look at a particular corner. So we zoomed in. Should say the mapping information in the background, that's obviously downloaded from our server, but they're cached on your local computer. So once you've looked at it, you've gone to a track once, then you'll find it's much faster subsequently. So you can see the different lines around the track. There's other options. At the moment, the track is just white, so let's turn off the map background, but let's colour the map based on speed, for example. So you can see now it's blue around the corner when you're a bit slower, and yellow on the straight where it's a bit faster. It's not particularly useful, but just for example. And also, I won't demonstrate now, but it's possible to display statistics on the track map. So typical statistics which it might be useful to display would be the maximum speed around a corner, minimum speed around a corner, maximum G-force around a corner, G-force or grip around the corner. So not demonstrate it now, but all those options are there. Okay, and the next thing I want to show is, at the moment, that's showing a whole track map. So that's from when you pulled out the pits to when the racer pulled back into the pits. So normally we want to cut it into laps or sectors. So you can do that manually. We can click on add a track map. Sorry, add a track marker. Drop it on there. It's going to say, oh, it's the other way around. Okay. So it's offering to automatically add sectors. I'll say no. But you can see now there's a red marker there. Hashtag in front of it to indicate it's a lap marker. So now we've actually cut that circuit into laps. We can also delete a track marker. So do you want to delete it? Yes. And we can choose to add it automatically. We can go to data, automatically add track marker. And again, so it's added it in about the same place and just see it there. So in this case, let's automatically add sectors as well. So we say yes. So in that case, the software has automatically cut it into, well, it's trying to cut it into corners, which makes sense. So we've got one corner here, and so on. Okay, so that's the a quick tour of the track map view. So just budget over there, zoom out. So the next control I want to introduce is the lap and sectors timetable. So let's, before we do that, let's delete all the track markers. So we go to clear all track markers, and let's open the lap and sector times window. So I've deleted them just to show you how this works. But so this is, at the moment, all we have is a run loaded. It's not cut into laps or sectors or anything else. So all we have here is not very interesting. It says lap 1 hour 14. So nothing much there. So, but if we add in a lap marker, as we did for, I'll add it backwards again. So flip it. Okay. So now we can see we've got all the lap times. So I think there's about 18 real laps of data here with all the times. And now it's offering, do you want to add the sectors now? So again, I'll say yes. So now we've got a complete table showing all the laps and all the sectors. And there's a few things to point out on here. So first of all, we've got all the laps. So from lap 1, that looks like it was a warm-up lap because it was a minute and a half off the pace, and then some practice laps. The lap marked with an F, that means the fastest lap of the session, of the data that's loaded, so in this case a 1:57.62. We've also got the fastest sectors, so we got the fastest sector 1, 2, 3, 4. So most of the fastest sector is actually on the fastest lap here. So that's what's marked with the F. The C is to indicate the fastest continuous lap. So that starts here and goes all the way across and finishes here. So you can see all the C's. And to aid with analysis, if you look at the top of the table, we've got the fastest theoretical lap. Now the fastest theoretical lap, if you can see, that picks up all the fastest sectors. So you've got a 1014 there, a 368 there, 1138. So it moves all the fastest sectors, and it says, well, if you did all your fastest sectors on one lap, you could have achieved a 156.23. So yeah, just over a second faster. So there is some assumptions in the theoretical lap. The most obvious one is it's quite easy to go into a corner too fast and you lose time going out, or vice versa. So it might not be possible to achieve all the fastest sectors all at the same time because you're on different lines. But it's a normal analysis tool, so it's quite a popular thing to look at. And normally for a good experienced driver, you'll see that the fastest lap time is obviously very close to the theoretical time. The one underneath, that's just pulled out the fastest continuous lap, which is 1:57.32. So that is also very interesting, because you know that lap time is actually realisable, because that was actually from some point on the track to the same point on the track. So 1:57.32 was the fastest continuous lap. I think that's all that needs to be said about that. There is some more, but that's probably enough for now. So okay, so we can look at a track map now. We can look at the lap and sector times on there. Next thing to do is look at some graphing. So let's just move those across a little bit, just give ourselves a bit more room. So there's two graphing tools in here. There's the XY graph. There's also the quick graph. So XY graph is the most flexible. You can plot pretty much anything against anything. It's probably not used as much for race applications. It's more used for engineering applications. So for today's sort of mini tutorial, if you like, I'm just going to concentrate on quick graph. So if we click on there, and again, just budget around to put it somewhere sensible on the screen. So let's put it there. So we've got this slider down here with all the variables which are available. So in this case, we've got longitudinal acceleration. I'll explain what that is in a moment. We've got lateral acceleration, and we've got speed. But we could select more variables. We've got, if you're on a motorbike, it will calculate your lean angle, for example, or cornering radius, and so on. There's lots of variables. We'll look at some others later. So the next thing to say, so on here we select what data's, what variables are selected, and from the lap and sectors timetable, we're going to select what bits of data are selected. So for example, if I click here, that's displaying all the data for lap 17, which is our fastest one. If I click here as well, now it's displaying and overlaying the data from lap 17 with lap 16. So you can see some of the differences in speed in this area and this area. Also, it can be very useful on the track map view. There's this option here, which is interactive mode. And what interactive mode means is basically this track map will then display whatever data is selected elsewhere. So it's probably easy just to demonstrate it. So let's click on interactive mode. Let's put it back to where it was. So if I pick a sector here or here, you can see that both the quick graphs and the track map view are both displaying the relevant data. And again, so we could pick the fastest one and a few others and overlay both on the track map and on the graphs. So you can actually pick up to 5. In practice, you never normally would. You're almost certainly going to pick your fastest sector and another sector to see where you are losing time. So for example, we could pick this 1354, and we could pick a slower one. So this was a whole second off the pace, so it's 14.5. So in that sector, we lost about 1 second. So the obvious question was, where would that be? Well, if you look at the speed graph, it's pretty obvious. So you can see it was on the red one's the slow one. So basically, he was earlier onto the brakes and braking all the way into the corner, slow around the corner. Once he was around the corner, there's not nearly so much difference. So okay, so that's now 3 controls demonstrated. So that's the track map, the lap and sectors time, and the graphing. So all that data has been generated straight from a GoPro, but obviously we've also got the video, which is what it's all about with the GoPro. So let's look at this one here. So that's video views. Again, we can access all these things from the results window if you want to. So you can have video camera views. Click there. And put that down there. I should say I'm opening the windows individually and moving them on the screen just so I can introduce one at a time. Normally, once you've got a layout that you're happy with, then you would save it, so you wouldn't be moving the windows around all the time. Okay, so now we have 4 windows open. We've got the track map, lap and sectors view, we've got the graphing, and we have the video displayed. So, and the video works a bit like the quick graph, so it displays whatever you select. So let's select the fastest lap and the lap before, for example. So now you can see we've got 2 laps on here, we've got 2 laps on the quick graphs, and as we scroll across, we can now also see both the video from both those laps synchronized on the video below. So you can see going into the corner, around the corner, down the straight, around the corner again, and you can see there's some traffic. So on the white one, which is actually the fastest lap, actually there's a car in front, which is now following. He's pulled away in front, give him a bit of room, carry on, etc. So again, if we pick one and we click on it, we just look at one video, we can pick several. So in that case we've got 3, or we could pick a particular sector. So we could, what was a big delta there, so just through there to see what was going on. Okay, so that's the controls introduced. So as I say, we've introduced the track map, quick graphs, lap and sectors table, and the video view. So there are others. You can display individual values, you can have a dashboard, there's playback controls, there's summary statistics, there's lots of others, but those 4 are enough just to get you going in terms of race analysis. So the big question is, well, okay, that's great, but in terms of practical considerations, how do I use that information to drive faster, get better lap times, be a better driver, and so on? Well, that's clearly a big question. There's no straightforward answer to that one. But in terms of if you're going out tomorrow and you want to use this stuff to improve your lap times, there's 2 things I would recommend that you looked at. Firstly, it's grip, and secondly, it's time slip. I'm going to talk about grip and time slip now. There's lots of other stuff you could look at. I mean, you can look at racing lines and, well, goodness knows what. There's all sorts of aspects to the race analysis. But if you're using the stuff for the first time, certainly the biggest bang for your buck is looking at maximising your grip and looking at time slip. So let's start with that. So when we looked at when we talked about the graphs earlier, the quick graphs, I said we were plotting longitudinal acceleration and lateral acceleration. I didn't really say what they were. So acceleration, it's an engineering term. It's very similar to grip. So when I say acceleration, you could substitute the word grip and be pretty close. So in terms of longitudinal acceleration, that's the longitudinal acceleration or longitudinal grip forwards and backwards. So a positive acceleration is the engine accelerating the car and you accelerating out the corner down the straight. So you push back in the car, that's a positive acceleration. When you're on the brakes, so you're going into the next corner, that's a negative acceleration. So the positive acceleration is basically limited by grip and your engine power. Your negative acceleration is limited by your grip and, well, to some extent, the brakes. So that's longitudinal acceleration or longitudinal grip. The other one is lateral acceleration. So as you go around a left or right hand bend, obviously we're generating grip on the tyres, and that's also generating a lateral acceleration or a lateral grip or a cornering grip, depending on what words you prefer to use. There's a third one, which is very interesting for race analysis, and we call it in our software vector acceleration. So I'll tick that one to turn it on. So vector acceleration is the combination of both your longitudinal forward-backward acceleration and your side-to-side, your cornering acceleration. So as it turns out, to a very good approximation, actually any tyres, whether it be slicks or road tyres, can have the same grip or can support the same acceleration in all directions. So let's take a road tyre. So a road tyre normally has a maximum of about 1g acceleration or grip. But it doesn't really matter. So you can brake at 1g, you can corner at 1g, you can accelerate at 1g. But what you can't do is you can't brake and corner at 1g. It's less because the total acceleration has to be about 1g. It's the same with slicks. So slicks obviously are generating more grip. So a set of slicks with no big aerodynamic aids, you might be generating 1.3, 1.4g of maximum acceleration. And again, it doesn't really matter whether that's cornering or braking. The total acceleration must be within the maximum supported by the tyre. So what vector acceleration allows you to look at is the total grip that you're using. But vector acceleration, it doesn't consider longitudinal or lateral, it's the combination of the two. So an obvious question is, well, don't you just add them together? Well, it's not quite that simple. It uses Pythagoras, if you're interested. So you've got lateral that way, you've got longitudinal, and you've got like the vector one, it's the vector sum. So it's not quite as simple as adding them together, but pretty similar. So okay, that was a lot of talk, but if we look at the graphs, it's fairly easy to interpret. So I've plotted vector acceleration. Let's look at our best lap here. And if we go back to the controls for the graph, and I mentioned earlier, you can actually colour the map based on different parameters. So let's colour it based on vector acceleration. Okay. And in that case, you can see red, which is the maximum acceleration, on most of the corners. So that's a pretty good indication that maximum grip was being used on all the corners. You can obviously look at the graph as well. So if you want to, well, in fact, let's use the statistics. So if we go to here, show statistics on the map, and let's say maximum of vector acceleration. Let's call it max grip, just for something. Okay, close that. So yeah, for the corners 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.6, 1.4. Okay, so a very consistent set of maximum accelerations. So this was a pretty experienced driver, so as you'd expect, they're very consistent lap times and the grip levels are very consistent. Typically what you will find for a new track, or if you're a less experienced driver, is there's quite a wide variation, and the biggest variation typically is tight, slow corners. So, well, yes, tight, slow corners, I guess we know what those are. As you go around, mostly because you are going more slowly, you feel more comfortable at high grip levels, so you'll be exploiting the maximum grip of the tyres. And then typically on the high speed, the more open corners, where maybe you're doing 80 miles an hour, 120 kph, 110 kph, whatever that is, the open ones, because you are going much faster, the self-preservation kicks in, and typically you've got a lower peak lateral acceleration, so you're not exploiting the tyres to the maximum. So that's can't really demonstrate it here because he was quite an experienced driver and the grip levels are fairly consistent, but that's the most common thing. So that's the probably all I'm going to say about grip. Really important, and all you're really looking for is consistency of grip on the corners, and for that you can either look at the maximum of lateral, or very useful is the maximum vector. There's maybe one more thing to say about the grip. I'll just click on one of these. It's again, let me find a good example of transition. Yeah, okay, so this is it's not a great example, but it's a reasonable example. So if we look at a particular corner, so here we're on the straight going into the corner, so at this point here, the brakes are on, so you can see the longitudinal acceleration now is all the way down at -1.3, so that is stopping. That's a very high level of brake. It's still in a straight line, so we're braking in a straight line. You can see the lateral is low, but the vector, so it's summing them together, so we get about 1.2 there. So braking, 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 all the way into the corner, and at that point it's starting to transition into cornering force. So now you can see very quickly the lateral g-force is building up, building, building, and at the same time, because he is an experienced driver, you can see the braking force is being reduced. So what you can say is that basically the tyres can support the cornering force because the braking force has been reduced. And then as you go around the corner, by the time you're here, there's virtually no braking or acceleration, so your longitudinal is low, but your lateral is now at a maximum, and that carries on. So So this vector acceleration, this is very characteristic of a very experienced and good driver, because there's a nice smooth transition between braking, so maximum braking force here, transitioning to a cornering force. So the vector acceleration is relatively uniform throughout the whole sector. So if that was a less experienced driver, what you would see is far less of a transition. So what you typically see is lots of braking, off the brakes, and then round the corner. So the vector acceleration goes up, and then it goes down, and then it goes back up again. And again, that's well, it's just this guy's just knows what he's doing. So it's just something to watch for. So again, that's all about maximising grip. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is another variable called time slip. So this one's a little bit more abstract, but it's really, really useful. And again, alongside with the grip, it's probably the most useful thing to be using in terms of our race analysis system. And it's probably the most widely used parameter, whether you're a clubman racer or top flight NASCAR or Formula One, whatever. Everybody uses time slip. It's called slightly different things in different software, but for our software, it's time slip. But time slip rate is what I'm going to be talking about. So rather than define it, I'm just going to show you an example because it sounds complicated, but it's really not. So let's pick our fastest lap again. Actually, let's just get rid of those statistics off there because we don't need those for now, and it just confuse the issue. So pick our fastest lap, and let's pick another one, which was a couple of seconds off the pace. Okay, so we got our fastest one was a 1:57.62, and the lap after that was a 1:59.49. So almost 2 seconds slower. So the obvious question is, well, that's, I mean, 2 seconds is a lot on a 2-minute lap. So where was that time lost? So what we can do is just look at speed, and we can see there's a significant difference here, and there's a bit of a difference here. So, and looking at the video, that one looks like it's possibly related to traffic because he's overtaking the orange car. You can see down there, and that there's traffic there as well. So you can certainly see from the speed graph where you're losing and gaining time, and that's a perfectly reasonable way to do it. But the nicer way to do it is, again, to colour the track map and to look at a graph. So if I turn off acceleration, leave speed, but if I add another one, so I'm going to add time slip rate, and let's just look at the lap 18. So we know this lap is approximately 2 seconds slower. So the time slip rate is positive when you're losing time compared with your fastest, and it's negative when you're gaining time. So in terms of where most time was lost, you can see it's here. So there's a big spike here. So that's time slip rate. You can also look at time slip, which is arguably a bit less useful, but maybe worth introducing as well. So time slip rate is in seconds. So that starts from nothing. So at the beginning of the lap, you're obviously exactly the same as your fastest lap. And as you go through the lap, you can see that the amount of time you're losing. So by here, you'd lost, as it says here, 1.05 seconds, and then actually gained a little bit. And then through here, lost lots. So you went from about a second off the pace to about 2.3 seconds off the pace, and then leveled out again. So time slip rate or time slip, it's exactly the same information. It's just presented in two different ways. Time slip rate is a percentage, so it goes up when you're losing time, and time slip is in seconds. But by far the most useful way to look at it is going back to the track map. And rather than colouring based on vector, looking at time slip rate, and this is a really quick way to see what's going on. So, excuse me. So the red bits is where we were losing time, and the blue bits when we were gaining time. So we just pick a lap. So we pick this one, and straight away you can see there, that's where that time was lost. So again, you can see it was because of the traffic conditions. So let's unselect that, look at another one. So this one was about 1 second off the pace, and again, straight away, there's that red section there. So out of this corner, fine. And then just going down there, just lift it off. Big spike in the time slip. And it looks to me like, because the driver gained quite a lot of time going round the corner, had more speed coming out and then backed off. So it's difficult without speaking to the driver to know, but let's compare that maybe. So if we look at both of those, it's a pretty similar line in both cases. But anyway, the point is that straight away you can see there's a red section there, that's where you're losing time. And that's a really quick way to do the race analysis. So we pick this one, so this is well, nearly 3 seconds off the pace, that one, and straight away there's a big red section up here, so that's where the time was lost. And again, I mean, that was looking at whole laps, but obviously you can look at sectors in the same way. So that's all I wanted to say about the analysis for the time slip. So there was we've introduced looking at acceleration or grip to make sure that you're making the most use of your grip around the circuit, and then the other method, which is the time slip or time slip rate, and particularly colouring track maps. That's a really quick way to get your data out, have a quick look, you're losing time there, click on it, see what was going on. And those two can obviously be used in conjunction with each other. The final one, which really does lend itself to the use of the video, and I've mentioned it a few times, is use of the video either for looking at racing lines, but the most straightforward application of the video is just to see what else was on the track at that time. So again, if we pick a particular lap, that's a very slow one, let's pick a racing one, and if we look here, so we know we lost time around there, and the question is why, and just by having a look around there we can see whether there was any traffic going on. I'll just make the video a little bit bigger. So no, there was no traffic there. So just a little bit too early onto the brakes is the answer there. Let's pick another lap and select that one. So it's red here, and again, so there was no traffic there, but just it was time lost just a bit early onto the brakes, and so he carries on. Okay, so that's three things to look at: time slip, grip, and traffic on the circuit. So I think that's probably, and it's pretty brief, hopefully it made some sense, but hopefully that gave you some sort of insight as to where to start with the race analysis. Keep an eye out for future videos. I'm going to do a few more of these with a bit more information in the future, and thanks very much.